Hi, I just wanted to talk about a very specific aspect where we can look at 5G and Wi-Fi 6 from a radio perspective. And that is not their coexistence, but how they manage their coexistence with their previous generations. My name is Shrikant and I am with NanoCell Networks. So before I talk about coexistence, quick catch up. Wi-Fi, of course, we are today in Wi-Fi 6 times 11AX. We started with 2.4, added 5 gigahertz, and now very recently there are announcements on 6 gigahertz. 60 gigahertz, of course, has been a more of a standalone product, you can say, and not yet mainstream. And of course, Wi-Fi, mostly has been in 2.4 and 5 gigahertz with ever increasing speeds, newer technologies, larger bandwidths, etc. Okay, driven strongly by a rate motivation. Now, how does Wi-Fi manage its coexistence? Because it is in the same bands, 2.45 gigahertz, the strong glue which helps them coexist smoothly, except for that very initial days in 2.4 gigahertz where we had the spread spectrum based options, more forced by regulators. We've had OFDM based systems, and this is the glue for them to kind of stay together. In fact, I often use an example like every Wi-Fi OFDM transmission. We can think of this as saying, hello, I'm Wi-Fi and I'm going to be talking for next X seconds. That's what comes in the Phi header. So this allows various generations, the older ones, not to disturb the new ones, thinking them as noise. Okay, and of course, each new generation also does some trick to provide new information. That's been a little ad hoc and kludgy, but at least for the connection part, this has been the glue. In fact, the only time Wi-Fi went away from this was the 11N greenfield mode, which is really not that popular in practice. Okay. So Wi-Fi has this preamble where legacy preamble, hello, this is Wi-Fi and I'm going to be talking for so much time, becomes an easier thing for everybody to understand. Cellular, of course, has had 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G, of course, ever increasing speeds as like Wi-Fi. But I think there's also a strong motivation for cellular to sort of, the generational evolution is driven a lot by voice to voice plus data, and that too with a voice taking a separate path and data, and then to all integrated voice plus data. Okay, and of course 5G is also looking at new applications in the future, but it's been strong application driven. And very radical differences in technology, as you know, TDMA, GSM to CDMA or WCDMA based 3G to an OFDMA. And the only time we are having some similarity in the radio technologies is OFDMA here. Okay, so OFDM based technologies, specifically OFDMA. So if we compare this sort of coexistence steps as well as the evolution, 5G or cellular generations are quite motivated by different concerns. As I said, predominantly a lot of application related concerns. I'm saying voice data kind of interactions, and 5G brings in even more. A cellular or Wi-Fi rather so far has been mostly driven by a rate requirement, saying that, hey, give me higher rates, higher rates. Wi-Fi 6 is a little different, more driven by high density. So you can say that Wi-Fi 6 is a slight deviant from that particular theme. Okay. Big changes in radio technologies, TDMA, CDMA to OFDMA, 4G to 5G, as I said, there is a connection in the technologies. Mostly here it's an incremental evolutions. In fact, Wi-Fi 6 is probably the biggest jump, going from plain OFDM to an OFDMA framework. Most importantly, in cellular, the generations are isolated in one of these domains, space-time or frequency, which means that they don't share the same frequency at the same time in the same place. Wi-Fi has to do that exactly. We are still stuck with 2.4 and 5, and 6 gigahertz is just on the horizon. So because of this reason, and also the underlying motivation for change, waveform across generations have no intrinsic connection. Okay, whereas in Wi-Fi we just spoke about how the generations are staying nicely together in the same spectrum. They are driven by the need to having to coexist in the same spectrum. Okay, so this becomes important, but a few changes, as I already mentioned, Wi-Fi 6, there are a few things which are changing, but still nothing major. 6 gigahertz is just making a mark. Okay, so let's look at what are changing. First thing, in the cellular side, I mentioned that 5G is the first technology which has a close radio link with 4G, and because of this and due to certain considerations in certain regions, there is dynamic spectrum sharing, which is mooted as an idea for operators to use 4G and 5G together in the same spectrum at the same time and same place. And that's motivated also by the fact that there are some intrinsic similarities. Luckily, to do this, there are some, what we call MBSFN subframes, which allow 5G to kind of slot in to send some crucial stuff. Then there are some modifications to certain time 1 millisecond slot subframe positions where one could send 5G data. So this is a very new area. Is this going to succeed in a big way? What are some lessons we will learn? I think we'll have to wait and see, but at least there is something here where the generations are tightly bound together at a radio level. What about Wi-Fi? So as I mentioned, Wi-Fi 6 is the first one which will go into the 6 gigahertz, but we still are going with the same backward compatibility notion, because Wi-Fi 6 products are not going to be exclusive in 6 gigahertz. So we are going to work with 2.4, 5 and 6. In fact, the next generation standard is where we can potentially do something, but they are also going with a very sort of backward compatibility across those old bands is very important. The only radically new thing from the sort of coax perspective is that many of those changes across generations in the preambles have been a little ad hoc and kludgy. I think in Wi-Fi 7 we are seeing some initial ideas of how it will become more organized with some version numbers, which will then lead us to something much more, you can say, nice. So same band, because future also, the next 20 years we might not get any new band. So 2.4, 5 and 6 are going to be where we will stay. So we'll have to manage both the backward compatibility and the future compatibility in the standards. Wi-Fi 7 is the first standard which is actually taking this into consideration. So I hope you have some idea of something interesting. So for more information, please do visit our website. Thank you.